morning and welcome to our Careers Now mentorship session. Careers Now is Food and Beverage Ontario's workforce development, multi-year workforce development initiative. My name is Nicole Galacci and I am the founder of Food Grabs and program delivery partner. And I'm joined today by our fearless leader, Isabel Doctor, who directs the program, and Roxanne Manitowabi. Did I say that correct? I said I would screw it up when I went live, but hopefully I didn't. So welcome both of you. I wanted to start things off today by giving Roxanne the opportunity to kind of share her story of how she became the executive director of ONECA, and to tell us a little bit about ONECA, which is Ontario Native Education Counselling Association. So over to you, Roxanne.
Well, thanks, Nicole. It's so great to be here. So how did I become director of ONECA? Well, it's been quite a journey. So, where do we want to start? I grew up in a small community. My First Nation is Algonquins of Pikwakanagan, but I didn't grow up on the reserve. I grew up in a small community just outside of Algonquin Park. And so after I graduated high school, I couldn't decide what I wanted to do. So I did work actually in food and beverage for a while. And then I decided that I needed to get an education. So I enrolled at Trent University and I took economic development and small business management. And then I went on to take Native studies, and I finished Trent in the early 80s. And then I went to work for a Native Training Institute. And, it really enforced, it was called the Anagonsijik Institute. It was one of the first Aboriginal institutes in the province of Ontario. And I worked in economic development and small business management. And I used to recruit and bring students from across the north, and they would enroll in this program and get their diplomas in economic development, small business management. So I lived in Peterborough for, I don't know, probably 14 years doing that, and then I moved. We moved to Sudbury. I worked at the college. I've always worked in education, and I've always worked for First Nations. So when the opportunity arose here at ONECA, I thought, okay, I'm not a counselor, but I'll give it a whirl. And so I got hired in 2002. Yeah, 2002. So that's 22 years ago, and I've been here ever since. So it's been an amazing journey. I've managed to, meet so many wonderful people along the way. And, I love what I do. I love our communities, the people that I work for, and the people I work with. So that's how I got to ONECA. I know I have a background in business, and I think, like ONECA is a nonprofit. So, it just kind of went hand in hand, right? And I've been able to surround myself by so many wonderful people with so much knowledge. So it's been easy. It's been easy.
Isabel and I had the pleasure of joining you at a conference a couple of years ago now, and an amazing group of people. I don't know, the passion and the energy that was in the room. We both said, I think it was probably the funnest conference I've been to. It was amazing. So can you tell us a little bit more about ONECA and what you do?
So ONECA is one of the oldest First Nation organizations in the province of Ontario. We've been around really since 1977, and we're mandated by the Chiefs of Ontario. So our mandate is to provide professional development and training for First Nation education counselors. And in the early years when ONECA first started, they used to be called social counselors. And we still have social counselors now in some of the northern communities, but they kind of play the same role as a guidance counselor within our provincial schools. So our job here is we've been running the Native Counselor Training Program since 1977. So we've been training counselors, and we have a partnership with the Ministry of Education. So the students get their certificates directly from the Ministry of Education, which is really unique because I don't think there's any other organizations that have that relationship with the ministry and get direct certification from the ministry. And I think the reason that we do that is because it's under legislation, that we can have that direct certification from the ministry. So we do a lot of training. We've got probably over the years over 500 graduates out there who've, and some of them use this program as a stepping stone to higher learning. So some of these people have gone on, they started in the Native Counselor Training Program and they've gone on to do their PhDs and their masters, and they've become leaders in their community and chiefs in their community. So they've gone on to do some really wonderful stuff, right? So, it's a lovely program. Over the years, it's changed. Like because of COVID, we've had to offer it online, and but it's always growing and evolving, and so that's part of the work that we do here. But we also create a lot of resources and make sure that and everything comes from the grassroots, which is, I think, why I've stayed so long, is because I get to work with those grassroots people, and they're so committed and dedicated. So like we develop a lot of resources on whatever the need is at the time. So like it can be anything from bullying to healthy relationships to counseling tools. So that's the kind of work, and we develop and we create partnerships. We look for partnerships like the one we have with food and beverage. Yeah, anything that we can do here to promote our graduates and our students, ONECA will take it on that challenge.
That's a great segue to have Isabel, come in here and tell us about the partnership between Careers Now and ONECA, and why did you start the partnership?
That was a special start, Roxanne. I was thinking that's a couple years ago now, and Roxanne and I met through a mutual colleague in Jackie Latham, who was connected to Ontario School Counselors Association. Actually, Nicole and I also worked with Jackie in the past. And we knew for the program that Indigenous youth in particular were underrepresented in the food and beverage processing industry, in the food and beverage industry, period, in the workforce. And we wanted to really understand why. So that was important. We wanted to figure out, what's the industry doing to not better attract, and especially Indigenous youth. There was good research coming out of Food Processing Skills Canada that said, yep, the numbers aren't very good, but at the same time, there's opportunity. And so Jackie connected us with Roxanne, which was really a special time. So that was the start of the partnership. And we knew that, well, we immediately connected with Roxanne, but we also knew that Roxanne's group represented, I think, Roxanne, did you say over 150 members that could really help us better understand where the barriers were for entry when it came to Indigenous job seekers into the industry, and then also help us guide the employers of the industry on what they needed to do to create a workplace that was more inviting and welcoming. So it's been a real learning curve the last couple of weeks. Sorry, last couple of years.
No.
Everyone will have to excuse me because I'm literally so sick right now. I'm being propped up in my chair, but I would not miss this opportunity.
Well, Roxanne, maybe you can share a little bit more about why partnering with Careers Now specifically, the focus in food and beverage manufacturing, why that was important to you and ONECA.
Well, I think there's so much opportunity there, and we have so many brilliant young people, and that are graduating with, a multitude of credentials, and so I see this, it's been a real learning, not just for Isabel, but for myself, to understand, how big food and beverage really is and what those opportunities are. And, once I started to understand that, I thought, oh my God, like we have all of these young people, and we have the link between all of them, like we have the counselors support the students. They know who they are. I could just see this evolving. And then I thought, and there's a bigger role for us to play, because, we need to, we have that educational piece, that we can support food and beverage, understanding the realities of First Nations and what food looks like in our communities. And so of course, the wheels started to spin, and it was like, oh my God. So that was, where we were going with that, is I think my initial thought was to have those students, to be able to promote those students. And, we have so much history, and, like food is a huge part of everyone's life. But for Indigenous people, I think it plays a big role in even how we get our food. It's different, right? And, like I think about our communities in the north, and, how far it is to get food there, and what food looks like up there. So if we can make a difference, and support those youth and get them into the food and beverage industry, and make them aware of all the opportunities. Because when we say food and beverage, the first thought that comes to your mind is restaurants and that industry. And then as I got into it with Isabel, and she started, I went, oh my God, I never thought of that, like that millwrights, or that electricians, are part of that industry. And so then it just exploded from there.
Yeah. Do you mind elaborating? Sorry, Isabel, go ahead.
No, I was just going to make one comment about just when we talk about learning curves. So I know when I first started having conversations with Roxanne, and again, like the program is concerned with connecting job seekers with different skill sets into the variety of careers that are available in the industry, because there's so many vacancies in the industry. But at the same time, there's so much opportunity for professional growth for people. But as I started to talk more with Roxanne, like we recognize like some of the issues of just proximity of where Indigenous job seekers are and where the businesses are. And then our conversations move to like food entrepreneurialism, right? And just young businesses and startup businesses. And it's not just about the workforce. It's about making food and the broader food and beverage industry across the whole province. And whether it's if it's maybe an Indigenous job seeker who's thinking, I'm going to take traditions or learnings from my history and create a small business here, that's part of the CareersNOW program. Or I may relocate and start a career in this industry in a different part of Ontario. Like there was no limits to our conversation, which was really for me eye-opening, but also pretty exciting at the beginning. And I think we've tried to honor that, Roxanne. I hope you feel that way.
Yeah, like we've made connections with, we talked about community-based delivery, and how do you train people, the training component, and, like, I think about Indigenous people and our people, and, we're hunters, we're gatherers, we've been butchering for years. We may not have the little name tag that says butcher. So we talked about, well, how can we, I know that there's a need for butchers in the food and beverage industry. So how can we train butchers, in Indigenous communities? So, exploring those kind of opportunities, the training opportunities as well. It's been, so yes, it's been a beautiful ride.
Would you mind elaborating on, you mentioned what food and beverage means to the community. Do you mind elaborating on that? Like educate us, how would that differ to people that aren't, native Indigenous? How would that differ to others that are learning about your community?
Well, I think for us, even before contact with settlers, we've always been able to process food. You know, we still have, like an example is the goose hunt. It's communal. People, we go out on the land. That connection to land. I think it's really important, and I think this is one of the roles that we have as Indigenous people is an educational role. And to be able to share, because we've always been taught that you take care of the land and the land will take care of you. And we know that all of our food comes from land, whether it be plants or animals, it's all about the land, and I think we have a huge role to play in talking about and educating the food and beverage industry on preservation, on, how to sustain and protect our waters, and to seed sovereignty is a huge thing right now. A lot of our communities are looking at building their own greenhouses, and so there's a role. Like, I think food and beverage could play a huge role in creating partnerships and working with our economic development um, departments within our First Nations to create those partnerships. Because you think about what's happening is, most of the industry is in Southern Ontario. But if you look at Indigenous population, we're all in the majority of us are in Northern Ontario. So, in order to really connect, I think there has to be a little bit of a shift, you know, and start thinking outside the box. How do we train? How do we recruit? Yeah.
I'd like to, when you talk about also recruiting, and just like a big portion of the half of the Careers Now program is committed to working with a cohort of employers, as you know. So there's around 4,000 businesses in Ontario that are food and beverage processors, and half of the work we do at Careers Now is about making sure that those employers are engaged in the program and providing them with the supports they need to do better with their hiring and their recruiting practices and their retention practices. And we do have like an employer mentorship series, and Roxanne's been supportive of that. Like, if there's a series of learnings that employers need to have, Roxanne, maybe you could share those when they're engaging with Indigenous job seekers, because I think that this is information that's so valuable to businesses. Like, what can we do better to make sure that people feel welcome and that they feel valued starting a position in our industry?
I think I'm seeing a lot more looking at cultural competencies, understanding the importance, of being culturally aware of things that are not just for Indigenous people. I would say for all sectors. I think that industry is working towards that, making sure that we understand the importance of family. Like, for Indigenous people, family and community are everything. So, and I guess this is where I was going with this food is, like, we celebrate everything, right? Like birth, you have feasts, walking out ceremonies, you have feasts. We have feasts for pretty much everything. At powwows, when people pass on, we have feasts, and there's always spirits plates put out for, those people who have, for the spirits. And so it's all about sharing, and we share a lot. Like, we still have in some of the remote communities, when they do the hunts, we have communal like freezers, so nobody goes hungry.
Yeah.
So all of the meat, the moose and stuff is put in these communal freezers. And I think, I remember my aunt and uncle, they used to work for, my uncle worked for Labatt's, and I think my aunt worked for Maple Leaf. And back in those days, there was this sense of sharing, and we do this in all of our communities. We share whatever we've got. And back in those days, when my aunt and uncle worked for these industries, they used to get, okay, I don't think it was profit sharing, but they would get like things, product. So sometimes my uncle would get beer, and my aunt, I remember getting these big rolls of bologna from Maple Leaf. They had the big wax bolognas, and I think, we people, like, I know we work in these industries, and we get a wage, but I think, that just that little things like sharing that bologna would make people feel better, because I know my aunt was so proud of this bologna all the time. And at the price of food and the way things are going, I think, this is something that Indigenous people bring to the industry, is we understand the importance of sharing, and I think industry can learn from that, like, go back to, maybe we have to take a step back and start giving out hot dogs, or, it makes people, it's almost like a bonus because you're eating the food that you made.
There's a pride there
Yeah.
of creating food. I think the food industry do that is one bonus that they can do, right, is share the product. And I think you're exactly right. If you're proud, whether, it doesn't matter what role you play in the organization, whether it's quality, whether it's marketing, if you are able to bring home the food and share it with your families, there is a huge amount of pride there. I think that's one thing that the industry does do well. But just talking a little bit about your own experiences and learning more about the food and beverage industry, and certainly the work you've been doing with us, what do you think some of the main challenges and barriers are for that Indigenous people would face in joining food and beverage manufacturing organizations?
I think, some of the challenges would be, actually moving, like moving from their communities down south, because there's a huge expense to that as well. But being away from family, and that is one challenge. Maybe part of it is education. So there's an opportunity there, for to create scholarships, and maybe put in supports for you know making that transition between a remote community, and communities in southern Ontario, creating apprenticeships, or doing community-based training, and training. I always found when I worked at the college that the Indigenous students, they flock together. So, we would get a group of students from up north, and they would always stick together. So, maybe training in groups of people, and then, making sure that they have a job at the end of it.
Do you know, Roxanne, how many students move from the north once they've graduated and start a job in the south? I'm not sure if that's a fair question, but like, do you have
I can't really answer that question. I know that, just from my own circle of people who are trained in the north generally stay in the north. And, unless there's a really, like, there are people who work in southern Ontario that are from northern Ontario, but, they may only do it for a short period of time, and then you'll see them transition back home. Like, I was one of those people. I worked in Toronto, and I tried it out, and I worked there for years, and then I came back home, and then I went back, and then I came back home, and I never went back. It's, yeah. So
I think there's a misconception that everyone moves for money and title, and it sounds very much like in your community that's not the be all and end all. That family and traditions. Would you say that's true? That tends to win out over
I
things
think
that.
it does, even in our, the way we do business. It's not like, I don't know if you noticed when you were at our conference, but we sit in a circle. So everybody is equal. So we're not in this hierarchical society where we want to climb the corporate ladder. It's, everybody has a voice, that's the way we do business. Everybody's equal. So you're right, Nicole. Like, it's not about, climbing the corporate ladder. It's about making sure that everybody within that space has their voice. They are protected, and and I think that's one of the really great things about that Indigenous people can bring to any industry is that leadership, that style of leadership.
Yes.
These are great nuggets to share. Isabel, maybe could you explain a little bit more about what the Careers Now research and program delivery has found with regards to Indigenous people?
Yeah, so we know, I was just looking at some latest numbers. So the way the program is set up, people create an account with Careers Now so that they can access the different resources and activities that the program has. And we know of the thousands of people that create an account, around 3,500, and this is during a period of the last 8 months, 3,500 of those people have identified as being underrepresented in some way. So that could be that they identify as a woman, that they identify as a visible minority, such as Black, African American, Caribbean, where they identify as South Asian, East Indian. I'm just looking at some of the numbers here, or that they also identify as having a disability. When it comes to identifying as Indigenous, so we have there as sort of the definition of that as First Nations, Métis, or Inuit. We know 3.5% of program participants in Careers Now identify as Indigenous. So that's well below the population level. So there's some work to do, but that's still a valuable number. Roxanne, I'm not even sure if I've shared that with you yet. So I really feel that that's because of the work that you and Lorraine have been doing to try to introduce Indigenous people to the program and the possibilities. And again, like Careers Now is not just about getting people into jobs, although that's a clear mandate of it. It's also about just raising awareness of the career opportunities or the food entrepreneurial opportunities that the food and beverage sector offers. It's about talking to people about the career paths. It's about trying to debunk some of the confusion when it comes to what are all the jobs. Like there are jobs in the actual production of food. There's jobs when it comes to the distribution of food. There's jobs when it comes to the sales and the marketing of food. So that's all part of the Careers Now program. And Roxanne and Lorraine Pidawanaqwad, who's working through ONECA on the Careers Now team, she is out sharing that level of information at schools, at career fairs in the North, and just talking about, just so we're sort of raising the bar of understanding and just sharing information about the industry. And then people will see if they see themselves in a role. And that's important to us. Now, there are also, of course, employers in the industry that are looking for people, job seekers that are themselves seeking positions right away. So that's a big piece of Careers Now too, of course. And we have, 600 jobs posted right now through our partners. We do matchmaking for employers and job seekers. But again, there's the other piece, which is just about raising awareness of the industry and helping people see themselves potentially in a role in the industry.
Yeah, because Roxanne, when you mentioned it, when you say food and beverage, people automatically think, I've been at school events and it's farmer or chef or baker, and they, and I stand there and say, no, all those positions in the middle there, that get the food to the grocery store shelf. So this is a good opportunity to talk a little bit more. You mentioned it earlier on that there are people in your community that have these existing skills that is so in demand. You mentioned meat cutter or butcher, and we know this from research from our other partners that we work with, that is a huge in-demand skill, not just in Ontario or across Canada. Can you tell us a little bit more about the specific skills or training programs that you believe would be particularly beneficial for Indigenous people interested in working in this industry?
Well, Lorraine has been doing an amazing job of promoting the little micro credentials within the schools, and it seems like a lot of they have a lot of interest in those little two. I think they're 2-hour certificates. Are they?
Yes, that's right. In fact, you're right. So the skills training program that's part of CareersNOW, there's 14 courses in total, and they're all about like a couple hours each. They're self-paced, they're online, and then there's a challenge exam at the end of them, and a student or an individual can then download their certificate upon completion. But they're great courses. They're courses like Introduction to the Food and Beverage Manufacturing Industry, onboarding for different types of careers, basics on food safety within the industry, basics on standard operating procedures, and also different courses on soft, like what we know more commonly as soft skills, but to do with emotional intelligence and leadership and working in a team and communications. They're really great courses. And I know Lorraine's been doing a lot of sharing of those courses, and those courses come through our partners at Food Processing Skills Canada. They're well-proven courses, and they are really, really good for high school students, college and university students to just like explore and get a sort of a better understanding of, again, the fundamentals of the industry.
Yeah, so those courses are amazing. And like courses like food handling, those kind of little micro credential skills that like I'm all about I always tell the kids, build your portfolio, So these little courses, they go on, they print them off, they do the course and print them off. Those are, those are the kind of courses that we here at ONECA can promote through our counselors, right?
Yes.
To make sure that the students are taking those little courses, or even transition courses. Like I think that would be something that is really needed for if we're asking people to move from Northern Ontario, maybe having a course on transitioning to Southern Ontario. What does that look like? Everything you need to know to make that move.
Do you think, are there courses you think on that, Roxanne?
Well, we do a lot of work on transitions, not specifically for food and beverage,
This industry,
but
yeah.
in education, like we do educate. But I don't think there are any courses like that. Like if I was, because most of our graduates are different.
Okay.
Our students tend to graduate, they're already mature, they're not straight out of high school, they tend to go back to post-secondary as mature students. Sometimes they have families, um, so to make that move, you're not just moving as a single individual, you're moving your family with you. So if to do that, we need to know, like having those transition courses, like if I was moving to Guelph or if I was moving to Brantford, I need to know about Brantford, right? So having those courses, like where do I find a doctor? Where do I, all of the resources, and, so putting together little micro credentials like the things you need to look for.
Mm-hmm.
I think those kind of courses would support any individual moving, not just our students, but all students, so having those transition pieces in place, and supports on the other end. So like when I'm moving to, I don't know, to somewhere for employment, who are my contacts? So like having a food and beverage industry, like each one of those employers should be, having a resource like that they can give to their new employees.
That's such a good idea. And even though I know you're retiring, Roxanne,
Yeah.
I'm happy, sad for you, but
So what are you asking me? Like, do you
sad
want
for
to
myself, but maybe we pull you back and you work with us on that. Because I was thinking about, like, Careers Now does have quite a great network, and Nicole is an important part of this too, with different settlement groups and different nonprofits around the province for newcomers coming into Canada. And that seems like the type of work that could be maybe customized. Like that would be the work I think they would do, for people coming into Canada. So maybe there's already resources available that we can customize a little bit. Anyways.
Because in each community, right? Like say I was moving to, I don't know, Brantford, there are Indigenous organizations that I can link to,
Yes.
so like for healthcare and I don't know, housing. There may be a housing.
That is a great idea.
Yeah. And I was going to ask Isabel, is there an opportunity to expand the skills training component of Careers Now to include new types of training?
Yeah, there really is. There is. So that's something else that we can talk with Roxanne about after the live stream. But I mean, this fits in the whole concept of like transition services. That fits into the concept of possible new training for the program. Training is really, training is very, very important for job seekers. We want to make courses available to people that help them prepare for a job. Like there's lots of research to show that when people engage in training, that it's empowering for them, that they feel more confident, more competent, and that they can go into an interview for a job, or they can start new employment feeling like better about their position, and then that leads to success, right? So yeah, it's really looking at what other kind of training can we add. Like I said, we've got 14 courses right now. So some of that's onboarding type training, some of that's technical, some of that's soft skill and emotional intelligence training. But what else can we do to really support people as they're coming in?
Yeah, so like even having like little small courses on cultural competency.
There we go. Yeah.
Yeah. Because a lot of the time it's not that, I don't think it's a case we work with regards to employers being more inclusive for people that identify with a disability and this type of thing. And it's not that they don't want to have their door open, and it's more around education and how do we best move forward, how do we do it appropriately, so it's all about education, and we couldn't do what we're doing with Careers Now without, the support and guidance from yourself and ONECA and being able to tailor these things. And I would add, from a recruiter perspective, I think these courses are amazing because I do, people reach out to me saying, I want to join the food and beverage industry, but I don't have any experience. And these are a perfect way to get those keywords on your resume. If you've done the micro courses, and you can put sanitation, GMP, all these words and add them to your resume, then immediately you're going to get found, because employers do use applicant tracking systems. It's not a case that they're reading every resume and can see the fit. But if your resume has these keywords that bring you to the top of the pile in the industry, because it looks like you have got some whether it's actual work experience or some courses, then you'll definitely put yourself in the position to get the interview, hopefully, and move forward. So we have a few minutes left. We usually encourage questions. I don't think we've got any, but if anyone who's listening after this, does have questions, please feel free to reach out to us. We are definitely open to answer any questions. I guess I was going to leave the last question, Isabel, unless you have anything else to add. I was going to ask, what recommendations do you suggest, Roxanne, that food and beverage manufacturing companies, associations, stakeholders, policymakers, what can they do to improve the workforce development outcomes for Indigenous people in the workplace?
I think, one of the recommendations I would make would be to really focus on building those relationships with our First Nation communities. We have so much to offer, and there's a lot of opportunity there to build partnerships, and fill those positions. So that would be my first recommendation, is to, really focus on building those relationships with communities, and, and look for opportunities to train within the community. We don't always have to move out of community to receive that training. And, there's so many willing partners, I think, within our communities, and and our local, colleges and universities. Our communities are already partnering with them to do research, and those would be some recommendations. Creating scholarships, specifically for Indigenous learners, who um, can see a job at the end of it.
Yeah. It doesn't sound like we're going to let you. I know you mentioned you're going to retire. It doesn't sound like we have that plan for you. We're going to keep you in our in our world, keep you busy. I mean, great ideas, and thank you so much for your support of the program. Thank you both for joining today, and for those at home that tuned in, thank you. And if you, as I said, if you have any further questions or want any more information, please visit the www.careersnow.ca website. There's a ton of information there, access to job fairs, advice, those 14 courses that we mentioned, all free, that you can complete and get your certificate. The address is on the screen there. Thank you for your time, Isabel and Roxanne. Isabel, feel better.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure, Roxanne. Thanks.
It was great to see you guys.
Oh, you too. Okay, bye. Thanks, Nicole.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
How do I get out?